Electronic Waste, an Introduction. Module 1. What is electronic waste? Electronic waste, otherwise known as e-waste, comprises any and all forms of electronics that have been discarded either as a result of its wear and tear, in which case it no longer functions properly, or due to its obsolescence, in which case the electronic has been replaced by a more advanced alternative. Examples of electronic waste include, but are not limited to, phones, mobiles, laptops, air conditioners, refrigerators, toasters, and all such household and personal electronics we equip ourselves with. Such electronic waste can present dire consequences to the environment and has given birth to a wide host of socio-economic issues as well. Through this course, we will be discussing why electronic waste is a pertinent issue in the first place, the consequences of e-waste accumulation, the solutions found by global governments across the world to help combat this, and what you can do to directly play a role in countering this crisis. Why is the issue of electronic waste important? As we identified in the introduction of this module, there are two causes for e-waste accumulation: wear and tear and obsolescence. In the 21st century, we see the exacerbation of both of these. The issue of wear and tear arises because we live in a digital era defined by unparalleled access to technology and a relentless cycle of reckless consumerism. Governments across the world have made it a priority to ensure that they can provide technical access to citizens of their nation. This includes electronic equipment such as mobile phones, laptops, computers, and the internet, for example. One can argue that over the last few years, humankind has made active strides to achieve this, with the UN stating that in 2018, more than half of the world's population had access to the internet. These aren't necessarily bad developments, and the growth of any community requires adaptation to technological advancements. However, the issue lies in the lack of recycling infrastructure that would otherwise ensure such consumerism does not lead to poorly managed waste. Countries like Ghana, for example, are notorious dumps for the world's e-waste, illegally exported by larger economies from the West. The lack of legislative and infrastructural power in Ghana prevents the proper elimination of this waste, which can cause the many environmental, social, and economic issues that we will discuss further in this course. Thus, while we as a race have gained much higher extents of access to technology, our governments have lagged behind in developing the legislation and infrastructure needed to counter the waste that comes with it. The second source of e-waste accumulation that reinforces the cycle of consumerism is obsolescence. We live in an era that is no stranger to innovation, and this has directly resulted in an environment that witnesses extremely fast-paced technological growth. Expenditure on R&D has tripled in just the last decade. We see record heights of research in technical areas like artificial intelligence, and tech firms are larger than they have ever been in the history of humankind. We have moved from Alexander Graham Bell's first ever practical phone in 1874 to iPhones since 2010, a device with 100,000 times the processing power of the computer on the spacecraft that landed us on the moon. With such innovation, we are constantly driven to own the next best thing, and this has also caused e-waste to increase with much greater pace. The growth of e-waste. While we have discussed why e-waste arises in the first place, it is now time to put into perspective the sheer size of this waste. The world produces 44 million tons of electronic waste annually, the equivalent of 137 Empire State Buildings stacked onto each other. While this is an enormous amount, what's as shocking is that as little as 20% of this amount is properly recycled, meaning roughly 38 million tons of e-waste is either burned away, causing immense environmental damage, or sold illegally to the informal market, which presents its own host of socio-economic issues. Despite the already enormous size of this crisis, consumption of electronic waste grows by 5 to 10% every year, and it is, therefore, vital that we actively work towards resolving it. Now that we have understood what e-waste is, why it is pertinent in the 21st century, and the size of this crisis, we will next delve into the multifaceted nature of problems caused by electronic waste. Thank you. End of Module 1.